So thanks again for everyone for coming. And we're delighted that Michael McGrath, Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform, has taken the time to officially launch the EU funding network this morning. These programs are funded by each of the participating member states and the EU, and a result of Brexit and the UK not participating in the upcoming program, the 2021-2027 program, there would have been a significant reduction in the budget. But Ireland and other member states have increased their contribution to each of these programs, and deeper, in some cases, have quadrupled or doubled their financial contribution to these programs compared to the 2014-2020 program. And I think this increased contribution demonstrates that deeper recognise the value that these projects bring to Irish organisations and citizens, and that there's a positive return on investment for the government and organisations. It's also a testament of the work of the previous project partners that have done in projects and the outputs, and also the work that the regional assemblies have done in promoting these programmes. So I'm just going to share a message here from the Minister. Hopefully everyone can hear.
Hello there, good morning everyone. I'm very pleased to be able to join all of you at this morning's online launch of the EU Funding Network. This new innovative initiative by the Northern and Western Regional Assembly will support and assist public bodies, NGOs, third level colleges and enterprises in availing of a wide range of different EU funding opportunities available. I would like to begin by thanking the Assembly for today's invitation and to express my gratitude to the Cathaoirleach, Councillor Christy Hyland, for his warm welcome. As we approach the 50th anniversary of Ireland's formal accession to what was then the European Economic Community, we can reflect on the benefits that membership and accompanying support has brought over the intervening years. Everywhere you travel in Ireland, you can still see the distinctive structural funds and other logos on plaques and signs, which highlight the many ways we have benefited from EU support, from major infrastructure road and rail projects to smaller community projects, to projects aimed at helping people acquire new skills and find better jobs. While large direct transfers from cohesion funds have declined over the years, reflecting the growth and development of the Irish economy, EU programmes remain an important source of support for a wide range of projects across the country. While many of these programmes are administered regionally and nationally through government departments, others are administered transnationally or directly by the EU through competitive call for proposals from eligible actors in member states. The focus of the Northern and Western Regional Assembly EU funding network on supporting capacity building for local and regional level stakeholders to access these competitive programmes is an initiative to be welcomed and to be applauded. In regard to these competitive programmes, today's launch event is focused on the 3 European Territorial Cooperation or Interreg programmes in which Ireland participates with other member states and neighbouring countries, designed to promote cooperation between member states and promote a harmonious economic, social and territorial development of the Union as a whole. At the beginning of February this year, I was very pleased to have sought and obtained agreement from my government colleagues to approve Ireland's ongoing participation in 3 of these transnational programmes: Northern Periphery and Arctic, Northwest Europe and Atlantic Area for the 2021-27 programming period. Ireland values the transnational and other Interreg programmes and has benefited from participation both economically and in terms of gaining experience through cooperation with other countries and regions. Positive elements of these programmes include the facilitation and enhancement of cooperation between people and institutions across administrative and national borders, cooperation of different stakeholders from several countries and different sectors, and this leads to the implementation of multi-level governance systems, strengthening of capacities of the public sector, and supporting of European integration through increased trust and understanding, and consequently cohesion in Europe. Negotiations between the participating member states on the draft programmes for the 21 to 27 period have been underway since early 2020, and have now been completed with a combined value in the region of €725 million. Initial calls for these programmes are due shortly, and today's launch of a support network for applicants and potential applicants is not just beneficial but also timely. Interreg is not so much about working across borders as building links between regions. It lies at the heart of what the European Union is all about. In a time when many are consumed by looking inwards, I commend the NWRA and all of today's attendees for looking out, continuing to build links, bridges and partnerships across the EU. Like you, I'm very proud of where I come from, but equally like you, I'm very proud to be European. This initiative is an example to others of how we can celebrate those identities. I understand the theme of the new network is EU funding, but I'm delighted to see that it is more than just that. Networks are about innovation and partnership. The more you put in, the more you get out. With that, I wish all attendees the best of luck in securing EU partnerships over the next programming period. Thank you very much.
Okay, I hope everyone heard that okay. And just a reminder for anyone that's come in a bit late, my apologies if you appear as Patrick Devine. I sent out the wrong link this morning. So that's your first challenge or test for today, is if you do appear as Patrick Devine, to rename yourself. And you can do that by just hovering over your camera and you'll see the 3 wee dots. If you click on there, you'll have the opportunity to rename yourself. So I'd encourage anyone that appears as Patrick to do that if they can. So I just want to, before we start, introduce our speakers this morning. We have Enda Candon from First Western, who's going to give us a presentation, an overview of how to apply for funding and some tips in terms of do's and don'ts when it comes to applying for EU funding. I then will be giving a presentation on the Interreg Atlantic Area programme. Christopher Parker, who is the program manager at the Joint Secretariat, will give an overview of the Interreg Northern Periphery and Arctic program. And then Sarah Davern from the Southern Regional Assembly is the national contact point for the Interreg Northwest Europe program. And then finally, we'll have Anne-Marie McLaughlin from ERNECT, who have been very successful in obtaining projects in over the years, but she's going to give an overview of one of their current projects, an Interreg Atlantic Area project called TIDE. So I think that's it. I think I'll hand it over to Enda if he wants to start his presentation. And again, if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat.
Morning, everybody, and thank you, Patrick. So I'm just going to share. I'm sharing my screen. I hope everybody can see that. Can you see that, Patrick?
Yes. If you just
okay.
Don't want to, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So just for the next 15 minutes or so, I just want to go through with you just applying for EU funds. A very quick overview of the application process and what's involved in programs themselves. As the Minister said, you know, we're now starting to enter the first year of the next programming period, 2021 to 2027, and particularly talking about the interregional cooperation programs and a number of other programs. They're all, in terms of design and structure, pretty much the same, with a number of thematic objectives and sub-objectives under each of the programs, and each objective has its own budget. And then there's a whole host of the cooperation program agreements around the program rules in terms of eligibility, the types of partners required, the types of projects that they will fund, and so on. So a very quick overview then, when you're thinking about a particular project that you want to bring forward to any of these programs for funding, we always start with the idea, scoping out our project idea to examine what's type of challenge or problem are we trying to address through the project, how are we going to do it in terms of actions and strategy, and then moving on to finding partners in other member states within that program area to participate with us and work with us to develop the solution and run the project. Moving on then, it's a matter of, you know, monitoring and finding a suitable call under some of the programs. As we'll see later on, calls are issued on a periodic basis, depending on the program. And sometimes, as we will see, calls are issued for particular types of projects only under a particular thematic objective. And then we're into the actual application development stage itself in terms of developing the proposal, writing the application, and so on. As I say, calls from each of the programs will issue periodic calls for proposals. And given that we're at the very, very start of the programming period, this is a really, really good time to get involved in terms of budgets are at their maximum. So you have probably one of the better chances of success by getting in early when the budgets are there, because we find as we come into later years of the programs, into years 4, 5, and 6, budgets are getting expended and calls for proposals tend to be on a more thematic basis. You will require a minimum of up to 3 partners. That's an absolute minimum. We're talking probably at practical level, minimum of 4 to 5 partners for a successful project. Projects are normally of a 2 or 3 year timescale with 1 lead partner and co-financing rates of up to 65 to 80%, depending on the particular program itself. Just a few key points to bear in mind. I'll go through these very, very quickly. EU grants are not designed to substitute or contribute to the core funding of your organization. They're designed to be additional, to add value and add additional funding to your work. So they're not meant to be to underpin your core funding. They have to be for something new, some new piece of work or piece of development that you want to do. The EU funding, and you'll see in your application, is very, very results oriented in that you have to define the results you want to achieve, and they become your key performance indicators, and therefore you always have to be looking towards the results as well. I'm just going to deal with the bottom point, the sharing. In any project, because they're interterritorial cooperation programs, we're talking about the results have to be capable, and you must make a commitment to share those results, your findings, and your outputs of your project to other EU actors and organizations and agencies across member states, across Europe, in terms of your outputs. And the final one, EU dimension, is that when we put together an interregional partnership to take part in a project, each partner must have a meaningful and equal role in that project and a set piece of work to contribute to that project. So we don't just form a partnership purely for forming a partnership and getting a project. Each of the partners must have a meaningful role and contribute to the outputs of the project, the work of the project, and give their inputs into the project. So at a glance, this is a model in a very simplistic format here. We have to define our objectives, because what do we want to do? And that is really identifying the problem or the challenge that we want to address through a European project. And I add in the next one, the status quo, I call it, is, what is currently being done to address that problem, both in your own member state and your own home region and across your other partner regions, because that's really important, because EU projects, they're designed to add value, add new thinking, add new learning, develop new models of doing things. So if we're only going to be replicating what's been done already, then there's no point having the project. We have to add value and build on what's been done already to offer a better solution. We move on to strategy, defining what is our solution. The actions then is how are we going to do it? How are we going to deliver on our particular project? And then, as I say, it's all about results orientation. What are the benefits of this particular project? What are the benefits of the cooperation? Why are the results that we're going to achieve better than what the status quo is? How is it going to achieve a better solution to the particular challenge that you're involved in addressing? And finally, the network. Who are we going to do it with? We have to do it with a network or a partnership of like-minded partners that have the capacity, the capability, and the expertise to contribute in a very, very positive way to the particular project. So my last couple of slides, I've listed here 13 points, which, depending on which cover all of the particular elements you will be required to address in an application form for an EU project. Now, some programs may call things, use slightly different names, but all of these headings are the key things that you will have to address in any EU project. And I've just highlighted about 6 of them in red because I don't have time to go through them all. And I'm just going to go through these 6, and we can send out detailed notes later on any of the others. But just these 6 are some of the more important ones. When you think about it, calls for projects are very highly competitive, and when you submit your application, which will be quite a long and detailed application, it's going to go to an assessment panel, it's going to go to a monitoring committee, and so on. And each project will be required to provide, in the first part of their application form, a 1 to 1.5 page short summary of their project in terms of what are you going to do, what are the results going to be, how are you going to deliver it, what budget are you seeking, what's the duration of the project in terms of start date and finish date. And this is really important. It's like your executive summary. You have to be able to articulate what exactly you're going to do in this 1.5 page document. Because lots of times that is what the evaluators or the assessors will continually refer back to give them a really good understanding of what you are going to do. So it's really important to get this part right and articulate clearly what you're going to do here. Second, partner information. Because these are cooperation projects, you're going to have a number of partners. You will be asked to provide reasonably detailed information about each particular partner, including their name, the type of institution they are, whether they're an NGO, a public body, a local authority, or whatever. But also, you will have to tell the assessors what is the relevant experience and expertise of each of those partners vis-a-vis their contribution to the project, i.e., what is their technical capability to deliver upon the work program, and what role they're going to take part in this particular project in terms of your partners. Okay, the project description, this is the big part. This is where we get into the nuts and bolts of it. And it's where you have to convince the assessors that your project is worthwhile. And in addition to in addition to the short summary that you will provide, you'll be asked to provide a very detailed description of your project, which include describing the challenge that you're going to address or the opportunity that you're going to capitalize on. What is the extent of that challenge? So you're going to have to prove that it's a big enough challenge that it's worth the Interreg program investing 2 or 3 million in to come up with a new solution that is worthwhile addressing that challenge on an interregional basis. What's your proposed solution and what it's going to deliver in terms of outputs and results from the project itself. You will have to justify the investment because you're going to ask for a budget. You're going to ask for quite a sizable budget. So you're going to have to justify why the program should invest this amount of money in your project and funding your solution and funding the work towards developing your solution. And finally, be really clear in terms of the results and the outputs that your project is going to generate. Programs do not want to see, I suppose, generic results. They do not want to see results that are hard to quantify. So you have to be very, very quantifiable in terms of what you're going to achieve. So if it's to do with climate change, if you're able to design and calculate how many tons of carbon will be saved or reduced in terms of the outputs of your project, we have to be able to articulate those in very identifiable measurements and capabilities. So the budget, this is a really big important part of it as well. And the budget is it is one of the most important parts to get right. The budget is not simply a one-page spreadsheet where we describe how much money we're going to spend by year and by cost line. You're going to be asked to provide your budget, as I've highlighted here, the budget for each partner per year of the project, the budget by each work package by year of project, and the budget by cost line. The cost lines are how much you're going to spend on personnel, overheads, running costs, travel and subsistence, and work plan activities. Budget will get complicated. I advise here, give it plenty of time. Start early. Start preparing your budget really, really early because it will get complicated. It will be one of the last things that you actually finalize when you're preparing an application. There's going to be a lot of over and back among partners once you present the draft budget. Some partners will want more, some won't be too sure what they want. So you need to give it plenty of time. So be prepared to give the time to have lots of changes and adjustments to the budget. Remembering as well that do not leave your budget agreement until the last day, because most partners that you will work with, be it a higher education institute, a local authority, will need time, probably a matter of weeks, to have their co-financing commitment approved by their senior management team and sometimes by their elected members. And that takes a number of weeks, and that has to be included with a project application. So give it plenty of time to get your budget right. Work packages and work plan. All projects will require you to write up a detailed work program. And this is done in the form of what we call work packages. A work package is an identifiable standalone piece of work that needs to take place, but is interdependent with the other work packages. And we have to define what each one will do. There are two mandatory work packages, which is the project coordination activities and the communication activities. After that, it's up to you to design how your project will actually be implemented and operate by designing and describing the other work packages. You could have anything from 3 to 5, or maybe sometimes even more work packages in addition to the mandatory work packages. You will have to define which partner is going to lead on each work package, how much budget is allocated, a description, a detailed timeline description of the work that's going to be done, possibly by month or by quarter, and what is the result of this work package, and how is it interdependent or contributes to the work of the other work packages. So spend quite a bit of time on that. It's going to take quite a bit of time to agree it, especially when you're working with 4 or 5 or 6 partners from 4 or 5 different member states, to get everybody to understand what's going to happen and how the project is going to be delivered. Finally, application checklist. Every program will give you a checklist of documents and things to be completed before your application can be accepted. Some of the important ones here: the application form. You're going to have partner status forms, signed legal status forms to confirm the legal status and the VAT status of each of your partners. As I mentioned, the confirmation of the partner co-financing. This is the matching funds that each partner will provide to the project. They have to be signed, agreed, and signed off by the essentially the chief executive or president of the organization to be included with the application. And there will be other documents depending on the program. So don't forget these. And what I say is start this process early in terms of getting your legal documents signed, because many institutions require formal approval by their governing body, their board of directors, or their elected members to allow them to participate in the project. So don't leave it until the very end. So don't underestimate the time required. I just very quickly, because I've got a minute left, Patrick, I've set out this chart here in terms of 5 quarters. And quarter 3 is the application period, 3-month application period. So what I'm saying to you here is you need to be starting perhaps 6 months or perhaps even more than 6 months before the call for proposals is issued, in terms of developing your project concept, pulling your partnership together, defining a work plan, and doing all of that preparatory work. Because if you start that once an open call is opened, you're not going to give yourself enough of time to get everything together unless you have worked with partners before, you understand them, have a really good relationship with them. Because within that 3-month period of an open call, you've got enough to do to pull the application together and get all the legal documents signed and so on. And finally, just as I say, some tips. I probably went through a lot of these already. Start with plenty of time, define your idea very accurately and practically. I think number 3, if I was to pick one on this page, number 3 is really important. I'll just say a little bit about it. Think why this needs to be transnational at all times. These programs are about interregional and transnational cooperation. And effectively, if your project is something you can do and deliver the benefits and the outputs within your own region or your own country, then there isn't really a definitive need for that project to be transnational. Really, you have to really sit down and think about this. So why do we need transnational cooperation to add value and benefit to our project in terms of the results and in terms of us generating a much stronger and much more beneficial work plan? Because that's what it's about. And that will be a key question in the evaluators and the assessors' minds as well when they come looking at your program. Why is there a transnational need to fund this project? And if they don't see it, it weakens your case to get your project approved. Seek partners as early as possible. Agree the work program and the budget very early. Give plenty of time to partners to approve the project. And finally, I would say, get familiar. All of the applications nowadays are filed through an electronic management system. Get familiar with it and attend the how to apply seminars, because some of the EMS systems, they can be a little bit complex sometimes in terms of entering the information, especially when it comes to the budget. So don't leave it until the last minute. Get familiar with how to work, attend the how to apply seminars, and wish you the best of luck. So that's it. Thank you, Patrick. And any questions? I'm happy to take.
Thanks, and yeah, just as I was saying there at the beginning, if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer them, either after the presentation or towards the end.
Question in there from Una. Can you advise who would be included in a typical three-partner project?
The three-partner project, Anya. Well, you'd have the lead partner in who would be the prime proposer of the project. Generally speaking, most EU projects, there will be, I suppose, a mixture you would find of public bodies, be they local authorities, higher education institutes and colleges, and maybe some type of public bodies, depending on the theme of the project. So if it's something around, let's say, the marine environment and coastal change, you probably have a local authority, somebody like maybe the Marine Institute, maybe some of the third level colleges who would provide some research and development services around this. I will say that, many people might be wondering, can private companies and private sector bodies participate? Yes, they can, but generally speaking, the rule is they cannot benefit and get a direct benefit from the EU funding. They can participate as partners, but not be a direct recipient of the grant aid, so they can contribute in other ways and get a recovery of their costs, but not a recipient of the grant aid. But again, the partnership composition is going to depend on the team of the project. Okay, Anya.
Okay,
Thanks,
Una.
Thanks, Enda. We have a few other questions on here, so I don't think we'll have time to ask them all. But one other question is, how do you get involved in a project, or how do you find project partners? And then I know maybe that's probably a question that's kind of relevant to a lot of the other presentations, but maybe if you have any quick tips on that.
Yeah, some very quick ones, Patrick. I mean, today obviously is the launch of your Northwest Regional Assembly EU network is going to be a really good forum for finding partners as well, because we have a lot of organizations, individuals here who would be looking to get involved in projects. Some of the other ideas that I would say is, to contact and get in touch with any colleagues working in different organizations who may have participated and worked with EU projects in the past, to ask them for recommendations or contacts they might have to get you involved. Seek a meeting and get in touch with your national contact points, like Sarah and Patrick here are our national contact points for some of the different programs. I would say get registered with all of the various program websites where you'll receive updates and newsletters on a regular basis about their activities and upcoming calls. And many of them also have a section where you can register the profile of your organization, post your project idea, where other potential partners from other countries are also posting their ideas there. So it's a kind of a matchmaking forum where you can browse through project ideas. And if you like one that's suitable for you, you can get in touch with the person that proposed it. And likewise, people can get in touch with you if they like your idea as well. So there are a number of ideas. I think probably important ones get involved in networks like this. Keep in touch with your national contact point and register with the program websites and post your details there, Patrick.
That's great. Thanks, Enda. Yeah, so networking and reaching out and making contact with people is key. Yeah, I will move on to my presentation on Atlantic area. If you're able to just give me control of the screen or the presentation there. And just to start, as I think I said earlier, that the Northern Western Regional Assembly, we're the national contact point for the Interreg Atlantic Area program, and the regional contact point for the INTRIG Northern Periphery and Arctic program. So I will do a presentation on the Atlantic Area program and the new 2021-2027 program. And Christopher Parker from the Joint Secretariat will give a presentation on NPA. Just in case anyone is not familiar just with INTRIG and these transnational programs in general, if this is your first time learning about them, Atlantic Area is a EU funding program that promotes interregional learning, sometimes also referred to as ETC, which stands for European Territorial Cooperation. And as I said, Atlantic Area is one of 3 transnational programs that Irish organizations can participate in. This along with the NPA and Northwest Europe. The Atlantic Area program has a very strong link with the Atlantic as a geography, but also in terms of its similarities across the region in terms of the economic sector, culture, and biodiversity, and they share a lot of common challenges, and that's probably the aim of the program, is to try and solve some of these common challenges. And from, I suppose, a policy and strategy point of view, it has a very strong link to the Atlantic Strategy and the Atlantic Area Action Plan. The program, like all these programs, runs in 7-year cycles. So the last program was from 2014 to 2021, and it had a budget of 185 million, with 140 million of that being ERDF. The new program, it hasn't been totally finalized yet, but we estimate that it will be around 151 million in total. As I said earlier, because of Brexit and the UK no longer participating in the 2021-2027 program, there is a reduction in the budget. But having said that, each member state has increased their contribution, so this helped kind of make up this deficit. And I also mentioned that Ireland, as a member state, makes a financial contribution to these programs, and deeper, the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform has significantly increased their contribution for the upcoming program. And I think this just demonstrates the value that the Irish government place in these EU projects. The map here you'll see on the right is actually of the old program. So this is to give you an idea of the program area. And this is where we had the UK was in this one as well. So the projects funded through these programs are still ongoing, and they will run up into the middle of 2023. So the program has a large area characterized by its proximity really to the Atlantic Ocean. The phrase "blue is in our DNA" is a common phrase used in the program, and this represents the common element in terms of cooperation, in terms of geography, economy, and culture. Marine and maritime activities serve as connection points. So if we think of things like fishing, aquaculture, agri-industry, renewable energy production, and the naval sector and ports. Sustainable tourism, natural and cultural heritage was a strong feature in the last program, and it will also be a strong theme in the upcoming program as well. And I suppose we think a lot about here in Ireland of like coastal towns and communities. Tourism is very important in terms of economic development and creating jobs. But also climate change and natural risks, particularly coastal and waterway related risks, is obviously very important. And when they were developing the new program, the program really wanted to address the impact of COVID-19 in terms of the labour market, inequality, structural change, and more of a need for a cross-cutting approach across different organisations, both in public and private sector. So this, apologies that the text is quite small on the screen, but this is was given to me by the managing authority, and it's the intervention logic in terms of how which explains the themes for the new program. So I will share these slides afterwards, but I think it's quite interesting because it explains the rationale for the development of the new program. So the first theme is blue economy. This really focuses on the common challenges in terms of the economic activities around the coastal and marine areas. The second one then is resilience. Resilience in terms of like sustainable development and the environment and the challenges presented by climate change and the territorial risks around the Atlantic area for the people living there and economic activities. The third one then is innovation and digitalization. And you'll see this digitalization is a strong theme across all the programs and is one of the key policy objectives for the European Commission. The fourth one then is tourism. As I mentioned, if we think of the coastal towns, tourism is a very important economic driver. Obviously, the fifth one is biodiversity and healthier oceans. And there's a lot here. We think about like preserving the natural biodiversity of our oceans and how things of pollution and stuff can affect that. And I suppose we're all familiar with things like we see on the news about microplastics and the effect that has on the ecosystem and biodiversity within our oceans, and the knock-on effect that can have on things like food chain. And then the last one, or sorry, it's not the last one, is efficiency. Is going to be a very strong feature in terms of resource efficiency, both in terms of the circular economy, but also in terms of developing renewable energies along the Atlantic area. And then the final theme is better governance. And this is probably more linked to policy and strategy and how there needs to be better governance within local, national and EU governments, but also more sharing of the outputs and the research developed in these programs and how they're considered in policy development. So last year, in developing the new program, the Managing Authority launched an extensive public consultation process, and I just wanted to share some of the key points from this consultation process. The first one is that I suppose when we think of the Atlantic area, we think of coastal towns and along the Atlantic, but I suppose the program recognizes that actually the activities that take place inland also affects the Atlantic, and there's a strong connection there. So we think about things, perhaps something like pollution and rivers and stuff that ultimately ends up in the ocean. So the program really wants to encourage participation from non-coastal organizations. So, for example, local authorities or SMEs or organizations that are not linked, that are not located on the Atlantic, but that might be based inland. They want participation from that there. I'm not going to go through all of this because I'm just conscious of the time here. But again, the better governance, as I mentioned, is they want that to be featured in the new program. Also, as I said, from a policy point of view, there's a very strong link to the Maritime Atlantic Strategy. Tourism is a critical element for the Atlantic Maritime region in terms of the value chain, and obviously ports and blue energy have huge potential. So in terms of how the new program, the projects will be funded under policy objectives, and then under each of those policy objectives, there's specific objectives. So if people are familiar with the cohesion policy published by the European Commission, they had 5 policy objectives, which are here on the left-hand side. So a more connected Europe, a smart Europe, a more social Europe, a Europe closer to citizens, and a greener carbon-free Europe. And the Atlantic area is decided to focus on policy objective 1, 2, and 4, and then a fourth strand under better governance, which is, as I mentioned earlier. So these are, I'll not go through these all in details, but so the program, the draft program hasn't been published yet, but we hope that there will be a call for projects later this year. But when it is published, these will be the policy objectives, and you can see under each policy objective, then there's a series of specific objectives. So as what linking back to what Enda was saying earlier, in terms of when you're applying, projects will need to like align with these specific objectives, and I think that's very important. It's also important to bear this in mind, even when you're scoping out potential ideas for projects, or to see does your project idea align to these here. So I'll not go through them on all, but as you see, there's blue innovation for competitiveness, blue environment, sustainable food tourism, and better governance across the Atlantic area, and a more greener Europe, as you can see, in terms of renewable energy stuff, and digitalization is a very strong feature in this program. So I wanted to share some Irish case studies. The first one is Proto Atlantic, and it's the two Irish partners in this are University College Cork and Cork County Council, and it originally had a total budget of 185 million, but I think it might be extended. And the program was really about working with SMEs that are developing innovative technology and solutions for the marine and maritime and along the Atlantic. And it's a very successful, very interesting project. I find it, as you can see some of the outputs here in terms of helping SMEs with their technology development, but also it's really, they're developed a startup accelerator specifically for this type of cluster of companies working on technology solutions on the sea. And they also help companies get investors and funding, and then they feed into marine policy development as well. But I think this is a very interesting project in the sense that it brings together that quadruple helix that we talk about in terms of private industry, academic in terms of university, and then government, and then citizens as well. The second project I wanted to share is one called Atlantic on Bike. And it's about, before the project existed, we did have the Eurovelo. And if anybody's not familiar with Eurovelo, it's like a number of long distance cycling routes across Europe. And Eurovelo 1 runs from the top of Norway all the way down to the bottom of Portugal. And there's 3 Irish partners in this project called Sligo, Donegal County Council, and Mayo County Council. And from the Irish perspective, they really want to develop the cycling route, the Eurovelo route along their Irish coast here, in terms of capitalizing the potential for the tourism opportunities that the cyclists can bring when they're going along this route. So there's a lot of development here in terms of working with local businesses in terms of putting infrastructure and facilities in place for these cyclists, promoting it as a tourism product, and then putting the proper signage and guides in place for cyclists. So I just find it was a very interesting project, probably a little bit different in the sense that I think it's quite innovative, and it took something that was already there and turned into a project that promotes tourism and job creation. So in terms of what makes a good Atlantic area project, there's probably kind of recapping on some of the stuff that Enda mentioned there. But I think it's important to have an innovative idea to solve an approach to solving a challenge. As I mentioned, it's very important that the idea aligns with the policy objective, and more specifically, the specific objective under that policy objective. I think partners need to be able to explain their idea well in their application, and it's very easy to go kind of into very technical details, but not clearly communicate what you're trying to do. There needs to be a strong partnership, as I mentioned earlier, with that quadruple helix model, if possible. And probably more important is the geographical spread across the program area. So if we think about the New Atlantic Area program, it's Ireland, France, Portugal, and Spain. So ideally, you'd want to have project partners from each of those member states. Again, this is kind of reiterating what Enda said, but put transnational cooperation first and center in terms of your application. You really want to demonstrate why there's a need for transnational cooperation and in terms of trying to solve what you're trying to do. Have a realistic budget. I think the people assessing the projects are quite experienced, so they have a good idea what is realistic in terms of what you're trying to achieve. But it's important to remember that the assessors are not always technical or scientific experts. So try not to use too much technical jargon or something that they wouldn't understand. And then finally, be sure to ask for help. And I mean, when I say help, I mean contact your regional or national contact point or the JS as well. I think they'll be happy to help out in case you have any questions about the project partnerships and writing your application. So I'm just conscious of time, so I'll go over this quickly. But this the first call for the projects hasn't been announced yet, but we expect it in Q2 or Q3 this year. The biggest change really is the geography. I suppose the UK are not in the program at the minute, and there's been a few small additions for in France with Andalusia and Spain, in France and Spain. The co-financing rate for this program is 75%, and if they hope to use simplified cost options, that's the objective. So anyone familiar with the last program will know that things like office and administration were calculated at a 15% flat rate of staff costs. So I think it's the aim that this program will also use that simplified cost options model for travel and accommodation as well. So it could be 15% off the overall staff budget. But all the programs generally, I think, want to reduce the administration burden that can be associated with these projects and use simplified cost options where possible. And I'd say there's a lot of very much valuable information on the Atlantic Area website. So be sure to research and keep it subscribed to their newsletter to find out when the first call comes up. And that's me. I don't know, I didn't keep an eye on the questions or the chat there. Or Enda, do you have any questions?
Yeah, there was one question come in there, Patrick. What % of the funding offer under Interreg and cover costs of additional project management or staff to coordinate projects in the new program?
The question is, what portion of the budget should be staff, is it?
Percent of the funding offering under cover costs of additional project management or staff to coordinate projects in the new programs? Emer, do you want to unmute yourself there and just elaborate on that?
Okay, Emer's not.
Patrick, I think you actually answered it there, the 15% cap around costs for administration and staffing.
Okay, yeah, so
your last slide actually answered the question, I think. And
okay,
thank you.
That's great. I probably should have maybe explained that. So yeah, so I suppose to try and reduce the admin burden in the last program, that whatever the staff budget was, so say it was 100,000, that 15% of that could be used for office and admin. So it would be 15% on top of the staff. And in the last program for travel, it was real costs. So in terms of the price of the flight and accommodation, that would be submitted. But there is an objective to try and simplify that as well and make that a 15% flat rate. But yeah, so any other questions there?
Okay, Patrick, I have one, but I see Declan has his hand up, so we'll just take Declan's and then we'll move on. will we? So if you want to unmute, Declan.
Thanks for the presentations, both Enda and Patrick. My question is to do with the Galway Port. And as we know, they never were able to get the T10 funding, as I call it. But because they've now changed their business model, that they're going to aim for climate change and be part of the implementing of wind turbines on the west coast of Ireland, as a contribution to climate change and also to the maintenance of those, as this is a new policy of the government. And I'm just wondering, under the funding of Interreg, etc., in doing a feasibility study or whatever other works they have to do to advance this, would the Interreg funding be available to them? Thank you.
Thanks, Declan.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Galway Port would be an ideal organisation in terms of to participate in the programme. As I did have an email from them, and I think I'm due to have a meeting. And as far as I know, someone from Galway Port did register for the network event, so I'm not too sure if they're on the call. But yeah, we very much encourage them. But again, I think it's very important to have that transnational learning aspect. So for the likes of Galway Port or any other port for that matter, it's very much that their project has a transnational aspect to it, and that they're trying to solve a common challenge. But yeah, what you're saying there in terms of how the role ports play in addressing climate change and all that, and the potential for things like renewable energy, I think is very important, and you will see a lot of those type of projects coming in the new project, I suspect. So thanks for that, Declan. We might just, in the interest of time, might move on to Christopher's presentation. I don't know, Christopher, have you got control of the screen there?
He does.
Yeah.
And if I could see the presentations. Hello, everybody, and thank you for your time today. Enland, is it possible to see my presentation? Well, Endon's doing that. Basically, I'd like to run you and give you a bit of an update on what's going on in the program, tell you about the program area, which is new, some of our program strategies and policies and priorities, a little bit about our funding and how we're going to go about that, and what's changing, and how you can participate. So I'll walk you through a few things there, and as you'll hear, you can ask a few questions at the end, but I think, as Patrick may have mentioned, there will be a general question and answer period at the end. So if I don't cover everything in the presentation, you're welcome to catch or send along some other questions. So let me tell you about our program area. And I'm trying to make it go down.
Do you control the screen there, Christopher? Yeah.
I don't think I do. I just did something, so hang on. Maybe it's a little slow. All right. Our program area, the Northern Periphery and Arctic area, is quite vast. If you were to go from the Finnish to the Greenlandic border, apparently there's about 3 million square meters of space. About 1.3 million of that is ice. Is ice-free, so it gives you a sense of how far north we could be. But we have a population in that area of about 7 million, and if you were to break that down into number of people per kilometer, you're around about 6 people per kilometer, compared to the average in the rest of Europe of about 117 people per square meter. So we have quite a vast area, but inside of that is a very rich culture, vast distances, and some indigenous people as well, as we can find in northern Finland, Sweden, Norway, and of course over to Greenland. Let's see if I can make this work now. Okay, now I've got it to go the right way. Very good. I'd like to just walk you through just a few things in terms of what our thinking is in terms of our strategies and priorities. And for the last 20 years, the Northern Periphery and Arctic program has provided a framework for working together in the areas, focusing on what we would like to call as promoting sustainability and development of those remote and peripheral areas. In 2016, the MPA moved closer with other Interreg program areas in the Arctic, and we started to work closely in collaboration with in other Interreg programs such as Calarctic and Karelia and NOR and Botnia the Atlantic to share information and be involved in joint events. So our work continues in the Northern Periphery and Arctic, not only among ourselves as Interreg programs, but in the work that we're doing. Moving into the new programming period, though, we've set ourselves up to think about some of the work that we've been doing and the emphasis of the work that we've been doing. And that's moving along and continuing in two of the priorities that we have going forward. And the first one being dealing with strengthening the innovation capacity, and the second one dealing with strengthening the capacity for climate change. And the third, a new priority for us, is that dealing with strengthening governance. And with this third, a new priority, we're looking at focusing on strengthening organizational capacities and the opportunities within the Northern Periphery to support projects and reinforce links within their communities based on their local knowledge, unique opportunities and circumstances that they have. But to be a little more specific, if I can take it down to the next one, in terms of our innovative and innovation capacity, what we are looking at here is capitalizing on what we've been working on for many years by attracting businesses and people to come together to sustain the way that they live through working in an adaptive capacity to develop the resilience in the Northern Periphery and Arctic area, and to contribute to, as Patrick was mentioning, of the cohesion policies, that of a smarter Europe, one of the first EU cohesion policy objectives. Inside of the innovation capacity priority, we're looking at developing and enhancing research, innovation capacities, the benefits of digitalization, and enhancing sustainable growth and competitiveness of SMEs. And SMEs have been with us for a number of years, and in fact, in this programming period, they're actually giving a bigger leg up than what they have in the past, and that is that they're able to actually have a higher intervention rate, which was previously 50%, but now moves up to 65%, along with all other partners, eligible partners in the program. The second priority is dealing with energy efficiency and resource efficiency. Excuse my spelling of resource, there's two S's in it. I should make a note for that for next time. And here we're looking at part of the Northern Periphery. A lot of the Northern Periphery is highly exposed to climate change. And we've been leaders in developing innovative approaches to a greener and low carbon solutions, and areas of activity where the program has been most potential is in this area of innovations and green solutions. And we've been involved with a number of projects in the past, and we're looking forward to take that even further. And this priority falls under the what we'd call the EU cohesion policy of a greener Europe. And here we're looking at promoting efficiency around reducing energy through reducing energy greenhouse gas emissions, climate change adaptation, risk prevention. And thirdly, as a specific objective in this priority, is that we're looking, as we have done in the past, in looking at the circular economy and how we can be more efficient with our resources in our communities. Our third and new priority is that of organizational capacity, and this is linked, as I mentioned in our strategy for the program. One of the components of the strategy for the program is that of dealing with our Arctic dimension, and here we've been working quite closely with other projects, other programs. Sorry, we've had clustering projects dealing with looking at organizational capacity, and what's expected going forward into the new program is that we can develop some more mechanisms and help develop the MPA roles in territorial cooperation and building capacity in the Arctic. And this could be done, for example, by setting arenas for cooperation across projects, not only between projects, but between programs as well. And this is our third priority that links to the European cohesion policy of better governance. I'd like to move on to the interesting and somewhat exciting aspect of finance and implementation, which I would imagine a number of the people listening today are interested to find out about. As Patrick was mentioning about the Atlantic Area program and its program document, the Northern Periphery and Arctic has submitted their program document to the European Commission, and is now up for consultation within the European Commission. So we're expecting feedback from the Commission and desk officers and experts alike in the European Commission to tell us about our document. So that being said, inside of all of that is, of course, the program partner countries that have come to play, both non-member and member states, in devising up the budget. And for the current budget, total budget, we're looking at 51.5 million euros. That's combining both non-member state and member states. And of that amount, in terms of percentage, 45% or 23 million will go to priorities 1 and 2, and then the final 10% to priority 3, the cooperation or 2 opportunities. And this is money that will be available for projects to apply for. Just to give you a sense of where we've been, not only in, as I mentioned, in terms of our policy and strategic direction, but that's all based on our existing results. And we've had a number of projects through the 3 or 4 programs that we've been involved in Interreg, where we have enterprises, new products produced, business solutions created, renewable energy solutions, technology solutions developed. And these are all brought together, of course, by working together. And the results of these achievements can be found on our website. I'm also being mindful of the time here, but I'd encourage you to go to our website, and we have developed there on our website, if I could show in the next slide, is a map of results. And this is very useful for project developers to have a look at. I'm not sure if I can click on the link to see if it works. Let's have a look. I don't know if it's possible to do this. This is a test for me here. Yes, if you were to look at on our website, you'll be able to, for example, this is one project here that we can see here called Busk, and that was dealing with reindeers and eco projects for reindeers. On this website, you'll be able to see, of course, other projects that have been involved in, but this is also a very good source for project developers to go and have a look. We also have a project impact database, and here's the link, and of course to all the project websites here. This is a very valuable resource for project developers to go and have a look at, to see that you're not repeating what's already been done. I could go on a little more at length about our existing results, but I think I'll move on in terms of the interest of time to what I need to say about what's changed and what is coming up for you. As Patrick was mentioning, a number of things are going on in terms of making things simple or more simplified for project developers, for programming, for the people that do the audits of projects, such as our first level controllers, to make things easier. So we're starting to, we've actually devised a routine where we're going to be having regular calls and schedules. We're going to publish those on our websites. We've enlarged our preparatory projects. They'll be larger in time and also in money, up to 100,000 total for projects, and they can run longer than 6 months, which is a new thing for us. We will be having capacity building projects, and this basically is for priority 3, where projects will be financed under this priority for building capacity and experience, and where we're looking at dealing with underrepresented groups, especially in this priority. We're looking at making things more simple and easier for SMEs to join. And as I was mentioning, the funding intervention rate has moved up from 50% to 65%, although Norwegians, I believe, are still exempt from this, and they can only have 50% as an SME. We've simplified our procedures for assessing projects and getting quicker startup. We have more Interreg specific indicators, which is very important, but they're very simplified, and unlike the last time, and when you begin to start putting together your project, for those that are project developers, how easier we've made it in terms of our indicators. We're moving from our friendly EMS system to a GEM system, and that's an automated or joint electronic management systems, and that's where applications will go in. So for those that have been involved in projects before, this is basically a good and positive upgrade from EMS to GEMS. In terms of simplified cost options, as Patrick was mentioning, we are, as we did during the previous call or previous program, we had simplified costs for travel and office costs and administration. We're now expanding that to office and administration, again at 15% of staff costs. So things are moving forward in terms of using flat rates for travel and other costs, which is very positive for project developers and ourselves as well in terms of administration, etc. I mentioned that we're trying to simplify things in terms of our assessment and the application process. And once we kick off the first call, we're hopefully going to be having, we will be having a call calendar on the website, which will give not only ourselves, but developers the opportunity to look slightly into the future about how the process will work in terms of assessments, decisions, applications through the different calls. And these will be on the website. Hopefully, and we are aiming for partnerships to be able to submit their applications twice a year in a regular intervals for projects. And as I say, we will be posting those on the website. So how do you get involved? Quite simply, there's a couple of mechanisms that are involved. One is at the preparatory project stage, which gives you an opportunity to develop your ideas among your partnership, finalize your partnership, figure out who the stakeholders should be, and then the next stage, and you don't necessarily have to do the preparatory project, but we do encourage you to do that in terms of finessing your thoughts, where you want to go, which priority you need to be in, and then which specific objective you need to be in, and fine-tuning. And so preparatory projects are a very successful tool for project developers leading towards main projects. The main project calls, as I mentioned, we're going to try and have, the aim is to have 2 a year on a rotating basis. And the call will, of course, we'll open up a call, we'll give a closing date, and then we go through an assessment and selection, and then it's over to the monitoring committee to make a decision, make an approval, and then on to the managing authority for contracting. And then the project starts and your information starts to do what you need to do. One of the key pieces of information I think a number of project developers are interested in knowing is that we were prepared to launch our call for in March 20, I think it was 20th, 27th. We've now moved it forward to April the 27th, and we're having a closing date of the 20th of June. And decisions should be made by the monitoring committee on September the 29th, if I remember correctly. We have on our website, you can see, and you're welcome to join our how to apply seminars. We have them planned on April the 27th, the launch date, the first call, and a second date in May the 11th. And for those that are interested in coming to an annual meeting of ours, sort of a kickoff for the program, on May the 19th in Copenhagen, we're hosting what we're calling the NPA in person. You're welcome to register for that and join us. It'll be an opportunity to meet current project holders that are finalizing their projects. I'm looking forward to going into the future, and future project developers and people that are interested in the Northern Periphery and Arctic program. So I would encourage you to see our website and here are some details there in terms of my email address if you have any questions, and likewise our website address as well. Thank you very much for your time. And I think there's a couple of questions maybe coming my way if I'm lucky. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks, Christopher. Yeah, there's a few questions in here. The first one is, what type of projects is the Interreg Northern Periphery and Arctic program expecting in their first call? So I suppose the first call is just around the corner, isn't it? Next month?
Literally, Patrick, it's just around the corner. We're having a monitoring committee meeting on this, the 30th of March, to finalize the terms of reference for that call, and we'll put that onto the website on the 1st of April or thereabouts, once we've got all the T's and the I's and everything crossed as they were supposed to do. But what we're looking for there with projects coming forward, we're aiming for main projects only, and only applying to priorities 1 and 2 for this first call. So that's important to note, that this is what we're looking for.
Okay.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you very much for that there. I think, and as far as I remember, there's actually a specific page on your website about that, the kind of the first initial draft terms for the first call. Is that correct?
That's correct. And what will happen is we will update that after our monitoring committee meeting on the 30th of March. And then, of course, the call will open on April for applications on the April the 27th is the drop. And that same day in the afternoon, we'll invite people to join us virtually for basically a light version of a how to apply seminar, just to give everybody a bit of a kickoff, because I know people are some developers are quite anxious to get going. And because we've moved things a little bit from March to April, they're ready to go. So that's a sort of first hand for everybody there.
Okay. I'm just conscious of time, but there's one more question here. I suppose you can, it kind of maybe answered already from previous one, but who can apply? And I suppose specifically we're thinking here, like in terms of the legal status of an organization.
Lead partners, for example, can come from any one of the seven program partner countries. They must be a public body, and as been mentioned by Endo and yourself, they can be a range of public bodies, whether they are national, local, regional, universities, R&Ds, all having public status. But what's important to know that lead partner leading up that group being public has to be one of the minimum partnerships of a main project, must be a minimum of 3 public bodies, and that one of them must be a member state. They must come from 2 of the 3 geographical areas of the program, and that the projects run for about 3 years. So just a few sort of key pieces of information about who can apply and some of the conditions of those lead partners, as it were, and those partners. And again, as you mentioned, Patrick, all this information is also available on our website.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Christopher. Will we hand the reins over to Sarah from the Southern Regional Assembly?
Excuse me, yes, sorry about that, I was just unmuting. So yes, just to introduce myself, thanks Patrick, and thanks Christopher, very nice presentation to learn about Interreg Northern Periphery and Arctic. So I'm going to present the Interreg Northwest Europe, so a little bit more down geographically on the continent. My name is Sarah Davrin. I'm actually based in the Southern Regional Assembly, so similar to the Northwestern Assembly, but I cover partners and I can help partners from all over the country. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you're thinking of applying to Interreg Northwest Europe as an Irish applicant. So just a quick overview of the 1420 program. So we financed a lot of projects. It was 378 million EU funding was allocated during the 7-year period. And in Ireland, that represented over 30 million that was given directly to 88 Irish partners. We had 52 projects, and of those we had 5 led by Irish partners. So we've very good experience in the country, and partners from all over, from Donegal down to Wexford. So yeah, please be inspired. This is an interesting slide just to see the breakdown of who received money in the last period. So on the top 3 figures there, you have the type of entity that received funding on average across the Northwest European area. And the bottom part and the graph, actually, the pie chart there, they show which types of entities received funding in Ireland. So in the last 7 years. So we had, good quarter there going to academia, higher education research. That's your universities, your institutes of technology, and so on. 32% went to sort of private sector, focus on SMEs, private enterprises. 31% went to public authorities. So that's where you have your county councils, regional authorities, also national entities. So for example, the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, Teagasc, entities like that. And the other 11% went, and this is important indeed, to civil society. So interest groups, NGOs, sort of lobby organizations or representative groups for different sectors. So in Ireland, we have had a really nice distribution of this funding, and we hope to continue that into the next period. This is also just a quick overview of the last 7 years and where we had partners. So the darker the color, the more partners, and that can be extrapolated to mean that they received more money. So the darker the area, the more money that was received in the last 7 years. And again, as you can see, Ireland performed really well. So I think you might find this useful for inspiration for the future program. The future program now, so 2021 to 2027, it will cover 7 countries. There they are marked in blue: Belgium, France, Germany, Ireland, Luxembourg, Netherlands, and Switzerland. Now, a couple of points here. The first is that not all of France and not all of Germany are eligible as lead partners, for example, or covered within what we consider to be the program area. It goes by region. So just if you have a partner that's based in France or Germany, just check that they're in one of these regions if you want them to be the lead, or if they're to be receiving funding. If they're from outside that area, it does not mean that they can't participate, but we just need to have a look at it. The other point is, obviously, as we all know, the UK is now not eligible as a partner in the program area. In the next 7 years, there will be over 310 million euro available from the EU. So that's the 60%. And then at each project level, the partners bring 40%. So that's what we call the match or the co-funding. So it's a lot of money ready to be distributed. This just to highlight that to be eligible for Interreg Northwest Europe funding, your project needs to have 3 partners from 3 different countries in that blue area marked on the map. At least 2 of the partners need to be from within those areas. The lead must be from one of those areas. Partners from outside the blue on the map could join as well, as long as it's very well justified. So again, as I mentioned, if it's from another area of France, perhaps we can look at it and there would be no problem, but we just need to check it carefully. This slide just shows the overview of the process and the planning to call number 1. Here we are at the middle in 22nd of March 2022. We have opened the call for proposals. The deadline for this step 1 is the 15th of June. So that seems very close, but don't worry. It's actually quite a light step 1, just a few pages, and you'd be expected just to have the overview of your work packages, who's in your project consortium, and a high-level budget. It is important, of course, to have a clear intervention logic kind of in mind, your project objectives and so on. If you pass that phase, you will be informed as a consortium during the summer, and then you would pass to the second stage, and that would require a lot more in-depth information. And the deadline for that would be the 15th of December this year. The decision on whether you're successful would come January, February, and therefore we expect that you'd have your grant agreement signed and be ready to really start working, hopefully by March or April in 2023, just to give you a bit of a time frame for your planning. If you feel not ready for the 15th of June, please don't panic. There will be indeed another call for proposals later in this year. We expect it to be around October, November time. And so then that 9-month process would start again from that date. So we'll have approximately 1 or 2 calls a year for the next 7 years. So what are we looking for? So the calls for proposals are open to 5 priority areas. So you can choose within these. They are climate and the environment, energy transition, circular economy, innovation and resilience, and inclusive society. Within each of the priority areas, you have strategic objectives. Some of the priority areas have more than one, and some of them have just one. So you could see there on this slide that circular economy actually just has one strategic objective. This is important because when you go to actually apply, you really have to choose which strategic objective you're applying to in the online system for application, which Christopher referred to earlier, this online system that we're all using across Interreg, I think, or at least a lot of them. It's called GEMS. So it's a drop-down menu and you're obliged to choose one of them. So it's really important for early step is to identify which of these strategic objectives you think your project matches. So for example, you're in the energy field under pillar 2 there, but you need to think, is my project more towards energy efficiency or more towards renewable energy? So you just, when it comes to applying, then you select which one. Here's priority 4. Just one there, that's pretty easy. That's the research and innovation and advanced technologies ones. That'd be around smart cities and so on. And then priority 5 is an interesting one because it has 3 strategic objectives. So here, the inclusive society pillar, you could choose labor market, they're the first one, access to healthcare, second one, and then culture and sustainable tourism, social inclusion, social innovation is the third one there. So just to let you kind of know that they're very wide ranging. To know more about each of these strategic objectives, so these pink boxes under the 5 pillars, you can go to our website, and for each strategic objective, you have a fact sheet. And every fact sheet gives you the objectives for that call area, the expected target groups, the activities that we kind of expect, and the results. So this can really help you to focus the mind and focus your project idea. And that's certainly the very first step, I would say, to anyone thinking of applying under Interreg Northwest Europe. Go to the website and look at those fact sheets and pick which one you think really matches what you want to do. So just to go a bit deeper into what makes a good project, I'll go through a few slides. As alluded to by others here today, thank you, we in Interreg Northwest Europe also consider that a good project represents a cross-section of society. So we're really looking for projects that include the quadruple helix, so the public, the private, the academic, and civil society. Public, again, as mentioned by others here today, county councils, national authorities, government agencies, entities like ESB, Bord na Móna, SEAI, county councils, the local waters authority. Those types of entities would be very welcome, and they would be considered the typical kind of public realm. Private entities, SMEs, extremely welcome. They get the same grant funding rate as all other partners. Business support organizations also quite welcome. Academia, here we refer to universities, of course, the obvious one that you think of, but also the institutes of technologies are very welcome, and maybe education training boards would be another key target group for us, looking at that learning action and learning region development. And finally, as mentioned earlier, civil society, so sectoral representative groups, NGOs, lobby organizations, or community development groups around energy, for example, you have a lot of those. The type of project that we're looking for projects that can be rolled out across Northwest European area. So what you're really looking for here is a project that benefits people in different locations, 3 different locations, and that the project will actually be implemented during the period of the project in those 3 areas. We're also looking for a kind of a combination of activities. So it's not enough to simply do awareness raising or capacity building, but we'd also look for you to see a project that has that, as well as implementation of or design of joint strategies or action plans across different regions, pilot actions for testing tools, or scaling up solutions. A good project would also need to be very clear on why it's needed. So you're really looking at the challenges in the countries where you plan to do your project. What is the problem that you're going to address, not only in Ireland, but in the other locations? What is the opportunity that you can take advantage of? What change, and this is really, really important, what change will your project bring to the citizens in those 3 locations? And we are also interested to know what profile of region that you're addressing with your project. Is it urban? Is it peri-urban? Is it rural or peripheral? And of course, finally, and I think a lot of you are very on top of this, it needs to be embedded in overall strategic framework. So I just have here on the slide, you can see the National Climate Action Plan. You need to pay attention to that. Of course, the EU cohesion policy, from which all of these Interreg programs stem. The European Green Deal is a very important one for most of the priority areas. And then, for example, the Regional Spatial Economic Strategy. I have here on the slide the one for the southern region, but the northern and western region also has an excellent Regional Spatial Economic Strategy that you'd, take a look at it and ensure that your project is addressing problems that I identified there, challenges and solutions. A good project would be expected to contribute, as we mentioned, to one of those strategic objectives. So those are the fact sheets that you go onto the website to see. You have to choose one. The project itself needs 3 specific objectives for to achieve your goals, with clearly defined outputs and results. We believe that a good project for this type of funding, it's not early stage research. So this isn't very different to Horizon Europe funding for research in terms of the universities. We're not looking to something very new to reinvent the wheel. Maybe we'd look to develop and test new approaches, or even adapt and implement an existing approach, but taking it to a different sector or a different region geographically for further uptake. Another extremely important element to being selected is that you include the long-term effects. And we actually ask for this to be included across the work packages, and that the activities during the project are clearly linked to the future long-term sustainability across time of your project results. In terms of finding international partners, we have an online applicant community. So you can just go here to register, throw up your CV of your entity, look at project ideas that others have put up there, and maybe put up your own project idea, kind of a one-pager, and perhaps you would find people interested to work with you. It's very easy to register. There's a link here. These slides will be shared after the call, and you can just browse around and have a look and see if there's anything of interest there. 3 key documents that you can find on our website if you're looking to send an application in the near future. First one is the Word version of our Step 1 application form. So as Christopher mentioned for his Interreg Northern Periphery and Arctic, we in Northwest Europe are also going to use the online electronic submission system called GEMS. Before you go into it, and especially when you're operating in a consortium, it's probably a good idea just to work off the Word version. So this is a really handy tool. So just go into the website, have a look at it. It shows you what you need to do for that first stage in a Word version. Very easy to share around and get your ideas moving, drafted. The assessment criteria, that gives you kind of explains to you how much percentage weighting when they're analyzing your project each section requires. And the eligibility criteria just goes into a bit more in depth about who can be the lead partner, for example, as mentioned earlier, public or private. The short answer is public can be lead partner, and other questions that you might have around different entity eligibility. Next step, to find advice, find partners, keep up to date. The first stop is your contact point. I'm the contact point for all of Ireland, so please reach out to me for Interreg Northwest Europe questions. If you're working with people in other countries, you can encourage them to reach out to their contact points in those countries. There's a link there on this slide. You'll get it after the call. You use the applicant community platform that I just showed in the last slide. I'd also encourage anyone who'd like to know a bit more that you can attend 2 webinars coming up. On Thursday, 31st of March this week, there is the International Launch webinar. That will be led by the Joint Secretariat in Lille in France. And that's for all eligible countries can apply there and just listen in, hear about the program, what they're expecting. The following week, on the 7th of April, I will also have a webinar focused on Irish partners and Irish questions. And we've invited there 2 very interesting speakers. One that was a project lead, just to give a little bit of feedback on pitfalls, lessons learned. He's from University of Limerick, very interesting speaker, and he's prepared a few slides to share with future applicants. And we also have another interesting speaker from the Three County Energy Agency, who's been involved in a lot of different projects with this type of funding, working with 3 different county councils in Ireland. And that's also a different type of experience. Again, a lot of information to share with Irish partners around procurement, different types of problems that you might run into in terms of state aid, issues that are very particular to Irish partners when they're looking at this type of funding. So that'll be on 7th of April, so please do register for that as well. You can find on the Southern Regional Assembly, or I'll put into the chat maybe, a link that you can register to both of those events. And finally, you can click on the website on our slides here when you get them to sign up to the 2 different mailing lists, the centralised one run by the Joint Secretariat and the Irish one run by myself, to keep you up to date from an Irish perspective. I just try to keep you, and if there's any kind of news that would be of relevance, you can link there. So with that, I'll just stop my piece. There's my email address. Please feel free to reach out. And perhaps Patrick will let me know if there's any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Sarah. Interesting presentation. It was just 2 take-home points. I'm just wanting to push anyone that's interested in Trig Northwest Europe, as Sarah mentioned there. I put in the chat a link to the webinar that's been run by the program on the 31st of March. So there's a link there if you want to register for that, and then also a link to the event for Irish partners on the 7th of April, being hosted by Sarah and the Southern Regional Assembly. So I suppose because as you mentioned, the program, the call for projects opened there on the 22nd of March. Is that correct?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So I no doubt there'll be a lot of organisations busy in the background now preparing and getting things ready in terms of partnerships and stuff. We have a few questions in here, but I'm just conscious of time too. First question is, what is the usual size and duration of an Interreg Northwest Europe project?
Okay, so the usual size, it's across 3 countries. That's the minimum requirement. And usually we've seen, if you took all the projects that you can see on our website, if you want to go and have a look, you'd have around 9 partners in a consortium. That was kind of the average size. The duration would be 3 to 5 years. And usually as well, I should maybe just say that the budget is quite sizable usually for the consortia. The average size was around 6 million.
Okay, so quite large projects. Yeah, very good. One more question here, just we'll ask some of the additional ones perhaps at the end, but another question is, how many work packages are recommended, and should I include a dedicated work package for communications?
Okay, so that's a good question, because this is kind of different to previous rounds. So this time there's a limit to the number of work packages under Interreg Northwest Europe. You can only have up to 3 work packages. So since that's quite limited, we do not ask for a dedicated work package on communications, project management, or long-term effects. Those would be expected to be worked into the 3 work packages that you deem the most suitable. So you'd almost cross-cutting really. So you could have your communications across the 3, or in perhaps 1 or 2 or more. Same for long-term effects, and same for project management. Project management in particular, we're going to take a bit of a lighter approach. So you're not really expected to go into great detail in the proposal, just the kind of high level, how it's going to be managed.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. So it's almost like the project management, that kind of goes without saying, is expected as part of it.
Yeah,
very good. Okay, there's a few more questions for you, Sarah, but I'm just conscious of time, so we'll move on to Anne-Marie's presentation, and we'll hopefully have maybe 5 minutes or so at the end for additional questions. Just also to note, if anyone that maybe missed at the start, it was if you appear as Patrick Devine, that was kind of my fault. I sent out the wrong email or link this morning, but you can change your name by just hovering over your where your camera, your name appears, and then just clicking the 3 wee dots, and then changing that to what your name is, just in case anyone wants to ask questions. Okay, so I'll let Anne-Marie continue from Airnect. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Thanks, Patrick. You can see my presentation okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so my name's Anne-Marie McLaughlin. I am with Airnect, and I'm the project manager for the TIDE project, also known as the Atlantic Network for Developing Historical Maritime Tourism. And we're just using TIDE as just one example, one case study of the type of project that is ongoing at the moment. So just very briefly on Airnect, we are a network of public sector organizations, and we're working to bring digital transformation projects to cities and regions across Europe. We need to update this slide because we just very recently added a new core member region in France. But essentially, we work with all of these regions, the local authorities, the regional authorities, universities, research centers across Europe on digital transformation projects. We are based out of Letterkenny in County Donegal. Currently, we're managing 17 interregional projects and working with over 50 partner regions. And just last year, we had 4 new projects approved and 10 that were awarded extra funding and or time. So a lot of projects going on. As I said, this is just one example that we're going to share with you. It's the TIDE project that is funded by the Atlantic area. And it is addressing the specific objective of enhancing natural and cultural assets to stimulate economic development. So essentially what we're doing in the project is using technology to create new tourism products that will attract new visitors to tourist attractions and thereby create new jobs and stimulate economic activity. So the original idea from TIDE came from merging of 2 ideas. One is using technology to enhance cultural and history, and the other is the goal of preserving and promoting underwater and onshore attractions and assets and artifacts. So we went through a couple of iterations of this idea before the project was approved in 2018 to start in 2019 with 8 partners from across the Atlantic area, 8 full partners plus 10 associated partners. So the objectives really and what we're working on the project is creating new, richer, more engaging tourism attractions that connect real world assets like shipwrecks, forts, museum exhibitions with digital technologies like VR, AR, 3D modeling, that sort of thing. So, you know, as an example, you could possibly visit a museum that has artifacts in it that were retrieved from a local shipwreck, and then you could have a VR experience to show you what it would have been like to be on that ship. So our particular focus, at least initially in the project, is on 4 themes of the Napoleonic era, the Spanish Armada, the World Wars, and Atlantic migration. And so the steps that we've taken are we're identifying and sharing among the partners the cultural and historic attractions that we have with all of their assets, the artifacts, the videos, photos, stories, the exhibitions that are in each region. We're also creating these new pilot projects that are VR experiences or 3D models of artifacts, live streaming of underwater excavations. So we're sharing all of that then on a platform. And the idea of the platform is that all of the partners can share what they have as far as attractions and assets and the pilot actions that they're taking. And then we're creating links between the regions and between the attractions so that we can create these new packages for tourism that reach across the regions of the Atlantic area. And as we're doing that, in terms of, you know, what has been mentioned before about the transnational element, so as well as sharing and creating tourism links across the regions, we're also creating a business model and a sustainability strategy that will allow other regions and other organizations in those regions to continue to do the same thing to expand this network. And of course, all of that is with the goal of enhancing the culture and history, and then having that knock-on effect of increasing visitors and stimulating economic development. So as far as the actual partnership is concerned, it came together with some connections already established. So Donegal County Council, Derry City and Strabane District Council, and the Government of Cantabria are all part of our network. So they are already working together. But for this particular project, we then reached out to other similar organizations and to universities and technology providers across the area, across the Atlantic area. And the diversity among the partners definitely contributes to the success of the project. So in Donegal, we have the county council is represented by people within the tourism unit, from Derry by the Tara Museum. Devon County Council is represented by their county archaeologist. Then we have our Government of Cantabria connections in the University of Cadiz. They are experts on underwater visitor attractions and on the management of maritime heritage. And then we have the regional tourist experts in Madeira. And then finally, the technology element in this project is provided by Clarté, who are VR and AR experts in France. And just one thing to note there on the left of your screen. So along with the collaboration that we're doing and the new pilots that we're creating and the new packages that will eventually come out of this project, the University of Cadiz also wrote a scientific paper that's attributed to the TIDE project on using underwater heritage for social and economic development. And they were also instrumental in creating the tourism toolkit, which provides a strategy for anyone who is trying to develop a tourism asset. It gives you strategies and guides and toolkit that you can use to identify those kinds of assets, identify which types of digital technology could enhance them, and then sets up a strategy to promote that and maintain it going forward. So just to give you just a quick example, I'm going to give you a little bit more of a look at one of the projects that we're working on. So this is a kite balloon VR project. So the kite balloons are essentially a balloon that was sent up from a convoy escort ship in World War I, so that someone could go into a basket below the kite, below the balloon, and look out for enemy ships or mines. So this will give you sort of an idea of the initial sketches that were put together. This is a joint VR project being worked on jointly by Donegal County Council, Derry and Strabane, and Devon County Council. And the VR is being done in this case by Clarté. So this is just to give you sort of the initial sketch outline, and I am hopefully going to share just a small piece of the video trailer for the VR experience, so that you can get just a short snippet of an idea of what's involved here. So I don't want to play the whole thing for you, but that just gives you sort of an idea. So again, this is a VR experience that's going to be in multiple museums in Donegal, and it's also going to be in Derry and in Devon. And it's actually going to be set up so that it can be transportable to be shared and moved to other locations. But so the person is going to go into a booth that's sort of going to simulate standing in the basket, and then see their equipment and the headphones and the map and the compass and all of that. And it has a soundtrack, it's got narration, it's got real sights and sounds of what that person would experience doing something like that. So it's some really very innovative technology and a lot of work that's involved in every tiny little aspect, including, recording voices with the correct type of dialect for the location. Everything in the VR that simulates the water and the air and the sky and everything else. So that's just one of them. These pictures just give you some examples of some of the others. there is an underwater excavation of a shipwreck off the coast of Spain, and the University of Cadiz have put together, it's a little small, you see up here at the top, there is a buoy that they've developed that uses solar technology and allows them to basically to live stream the excavation that they're doing underwater online. There are other, there's a dry dive virtual experience, essentially allowing you to do some underwater exploration without getting wet. There's plans for 3D models of artifacts. There is VR experience of being a passenger on an immigrant ship crossing the Atlantic. Another one on being on, taking you through an exploration of a Napoleonic era ship that was wrecked off the coast of Donegal. So some very, very interesting projects going on there. So along with, being a very exciting project with emerging technology, some very good partners, and learning a lot about culture and history, some of the practicalities of being part of one of these projects. Of course, we have once we're established and set up and have gone through the process of creating the original project, we have regular project meetings. So we meet at least once a month, and then in between as we need to. And obviously the partners have ongoing engagement with their stakeholders as things proceed. Every 6 months, we have a partner steering committee meeting. Those would normally be in person, and this project team did get a chance to do that a couple of times before they switched to being online meetings. We have to report every 6 months and include our claims. Each partner does that. And then we have a combined project report. And obviously project communications is a large part of the project as well, where we not just internally, but we communicate externally the plans and the progress that's being made on the pilots and the project as a whole. So just quickly as well, so along with all of that, just on a less project specific note, some of the benefits of participating in the EU projects at a high level, it allows you to get funding. Obviously it's co-funded and there's matching involved, but it does allow to get funding for innovative local projects that might not otherwise happen. It sets up a structure for real knowledge exchange between the partners and between even stretching out to the external services that those partners engage with. It allows access to technology and expertise that you might not otherwise have on hand. And of course, it expands the network of potential future partners, because when you're working with these partners and get to know them, then that increases the possibility for future other collaborations as well. And so that is essentially it for my quick case study on the TIDE project. You can get any more information you like on the TIDE website. Feel free to email me, and I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
That's great, Anne-Marie. Thank you very much. It's I find it very interesting to get an insight and to see what kind of the outcomes of some of these projects are, and it was a great example of how VR technology is being used to kind of enhance the tourism experience. But I also think the project is very much a good demonstration of bringing together different key actors and key partners, in terms of you had the tourism body there, element from arm of Donegal County Council, but you're also bringing together the universities and the technology providers to make all this happen. And I think that's a great example. We've a few questions here, if that's okay. So first one is, what is ERINEC's experience of finding and joining partnerships of different types of projects? And just to add to that, I know you said you have your existing network there, and you gave the example of where, say, 2 or 3 partners where you were able to go to directly, but then you also brought in some new partners that weren't part of your regular network, I suppose. So yeah, the question is, what's your experience of finding and joining partnerships for different projects?
Yeah, well, ERINEC's been doing this work for a long time, so we do have a good established network, but basically it's from getting to know people through existing projects, through the network. Another thing is having a strong connection with our national contact. That helps, and we're also registered with all the different funding programs, so that we know what's going on and what's coming up. We, express interest in other projects and other areas. So basically, networking begets networking, and the more contacts that you have, the more projects that you're involved with, it sort of increases your reach. And just to give one example, which has nothing to do with Tide, we were recently asked to participate in a project on increasing gender equality in rural communities and farming. And the reason we were asked to do that wasn't actually based on directly on a project. It was a study that we had done last year that was asking, women in European projects about their experiences. So the more people see and hear of you on different platforms and in different projects, the easier it's going to be to find partners for any type of project.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, and I mean, sometimes that's a great example. Sometimes it's just communicating the work that you're doing, the results, and then sometimes someone comes knocking at your door in terms of they wanting a project. Yeah, one more question here is, what are the overheads involved in being part of an EU project?
Okay, well, some of these have been addressed by the other speakers as well. So EarnAct is generally, not always, but we're generally the lead partner. So we have that extra project management and communication responsibility. But basically, the partners have obviously contribute to the original plan for the project, help to work out the budget, get the organizational approvals. And I know that was mentioned a couple of times. That's something that can take some time and effort as well. They plan and participate in events. They help to share the communications. As far as paperwork's concerned, obviously we have to monitor and track and keep records of what's going on, what the project progress is, as well as the costs and expenses. But as has been mentioned again by the other speakers, that is being simplified as we go through the programs. So for example, so as was mentioned, so right now you have your staff costs, and the office and administration is a flat rate percentage of staff costs. At the moment, we have to track and account for travel expenses, which hasn't been so much of an issue in the last couple of years, but hopefully will be again. And some of the funding programs are going to switch that into a flat rate as well. So that will simplify things too. So there is some overhead, but it's definitely manageable.
Okay, that's great. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'm just conscious of time. I was just going to, if anyone else has any last minute questions, please put them in the chat. But I just kind of want to wrap up, and I just want to wrap up by maybe sharing a couple of key dates here, if that's okay. 2 seconds. Can everyone see my screen here? It's just a one-page table. Yeah, hopefully people can see it. Can they? Yeah, if someone wants to confirm that for me. So this is, hopefully I have the dates here, right? One thing we program we didn't talk about today was the Interreg Europe, which would be Interreg C, or the other ones are Interreg B ones. So the Interreg Europe is interregional right across Europe, so it's not just selected regions. And the first call for this opens on the 5th of April and closes on 31st of May. So, and they're also launching with a kind of a how to apply all day. I think it's called Europe Let's Cooperate. So we can send out the link to that afterwards. But it's a great opportunity, I suppose, to learn what the new policy objectives and funding priorities will be for the program, but also it's a very much a great opportunity for networking if you wanted to be involved in the Interreg Europe project. I would like to stress that Interreg Europe is very much focused on policy influence, but that doesn't mean that just that SMEs and different stuff can't participate. It's the same in terms of that quadruple helix model of organizations. I'm just to kind of summarize here what what Christopher said, and Christopher can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the 27th of April is when the first call for projects opens, and the closing date is on the 20th of June, and they'll have a how to apply webinar as well. So I'd encourage everyone to join that. And then there's also be a networking event in person out in Copenhagen, as Christopher mentioned, on the 19th of May. As Sarah said, the Interreg Northwest Europe program is already just opened there last week on the 22nd of March. But if you want to participate or just even interested in participating in that program, there is the How to Apply webinar on the 31st, which is this week. And the Atlantic Area program is still just finalizing the details of the new program, so the dates still have to be confirmed. But we'll send this table round to everyone that attended today afterwards, and we will also put it up on the website. So just don't think there's any other questions there, but just want to say firstly, thanks to everyone for taking 2 hours out of your morning to attend, because it's the likes of you potential project applicants that we depend on to make the program successful in what it is. So I very much encourage you to contact either me or Christopher in the JS, or Sarah if you're interested in the Northwest Europe program. If you have any just thoughts or questions, please contact yeah, so I'm just seeing from Christopher there. Is it 11th of May, How to Apply webinar, is it?
There's two. There's one
there's two.
Yeah, two.
Okay, so the first one's on the 27th and the second one's on the 11th of May.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then the 19th of May, you have an in-person one event in Copenhagen.
That's correct.
Okay, that's good.
All information on the website.
All information on the website. Yeah, we'll send that around. Yeah, and on that, thank you very much to our speakers and Christopher, Sarah, and Anne-Marie. Thank you very much. Really appreciate for sharing. There's a lot of valuable information condensed into those 2 hours. I'd also like to thank Minister Michael McGrath for taking the time to create that video and formally launch the network. I would also like to say today we really focused on Interreg transnational programs, but the whole idea of this EU funding network is that we're going to have regular webinars, maybe even make them a little bit shorter, around 45 minutes to an hour, and we'll, as calls come up, and we'll make them more specific about the individual calls. But I'm just conscious that there's other ETC programs like URBACT and SBON as well that we want to share the details of. So thank you very much for everyone for attending. I think you have my details, and we'll be sharing it on the website afterwards. Okay then. I'm sure everyone's getting pretty hungry, so let everyone get some lunch. Thank you very much for attending today. All the best.